name is Terry Kirby, and I'm a volunteer with Acre Incorporated Active Citizens for Responsible Expansion. Just want to take a moment here to produce a chart for our viewing. I want to dovetail off some of the previous comments about sheer magnitude of the proposal, both at 800,000 square feet, as well as at the proposed compromise at 650,000 square feet. The International Council of Shopping Centers, the ICSC, is the industry trade association and lobbying group for mall developers. The ICSC defines various shopping center sizes and will provide this to you for your reference. So from the top we have on the left side a listing from small down to mammoth of the center type, from neighborhood center and community center, which typically serve a primary trade area of 3 to 6 miles. Then it would be comprised of small local supermarkets and other related services. These are sometimes called, we often hear the term strip center, which is just kind of a jargon vernacular for neighborhood center or community center. It's the next two that we're talking about here this evening. And if you'll notice, I should step back for a moment. The first two centers typically are sized at about 30 to 150,000 square feet for a neighborhood center, and 100 to 350,000 square feet of retail space for a community center. It's the next two levels that we want to point out for this evening, because we've heard it referred to in our initial witness and another testimony by the Village of North Barrington. The International Council of Shopping Centers defines a regional shopping center as that of 400,000 to 800,000 square feet in retail space, comprised typically of 2 or more anchor stores surrounded by other merchants. A regional shopping center of 400 to 800,000 square feet typically pulls from a primary trade area of a 15-mile radius and a secondary trade area of 25 miles. The International Council of Shopping Centers defines a super-regional shopping mall as those centers that are of 800,000 square feet or larger. A super-regional shopping mall is typically comprised of 3 to 5 or more anchor department stores surrounded by other mass merchants, fashion apparel, and associated merchants. A super-regional shopping mall draws from a primary trade area of 25 miles and a secondary trade area of up to 50 miles. So we thought it would be helpful for all parties involved, as we look at the sizing allowed, to understand how the retail segment itself looks at the sizing in relation to what this applicant is requesting. Both at the 800,000 square foot level, defined by the International Council of Shopping Centers as a super regional mall, and at the 650,000 square foot level of the proposed compromise, which is defined by the International Council of Shopping Centers as a regional mall. We might also point to the last entry on this slide, and that is the definition for an outlet center. And keep in mind that there are no prerequisites or requirements within either the applicant's petition nor in the compromise document that would preclude an outlet center, which typically is in that up to 400,000 square foot size. And on the right side of this chart, you'll see draws from a radius for a primary service area of up to 75 miles and often interstate. I want to relate to our initial witness and his testimony regarding the town of Lenox and his experiences with regional shopping mall proposals and super regional shopping mall proposals and the requirements they bring forward for infrastructure needs, particularly roadway improvements. And I want to also echo the comments by both our witness and the witness of the Village of North Barrington from Tesca Associates. These regional and super regional centers are primarily located adjacent to major highways and interstates. And we would like to, as a reminder, bring to mind those that are closest to the subject property. The Hawthorne Center in Vernon Hills is off a frontage road or cargo road from Interstate 94. The Woodfield Mall in Schaumburg, Illinois is at the intersection of two interstate highways, Interstate 90 and Interstate 290. The Huntley Outlet Center in Huntley, Illinois is at an exit for Interstate 90 at Route 47. The Arboretum at South Barrington is at an exit for Interstate 90 at Route 59. And the nearby Deer Park Town Center, which has been referred to frequently here, is on a property that has been zoned for decades commercial. It's on a 300-acre total mixed-use property, and it's on what can be considered a frontage for a cargo road from Route 53, an extension of Interstate 290. So at this time, to reiterate the impacts of highway and roadway needs for regional and super regional malls, I would ask Mike Smith to step up.
Well, basically, I concur with everything he said there. My experience with Forest City and super regional mall that we were looking at dictated that not only did we have extensive cross sections of roadways for the improvements they handle with traffic, but as a matter of fact, having it at the intersection of two interstates, which was pretty much required by the developer before you even considered the site, we were going to have to also have them construct what's known as a Texas roundabout. And in essence, it's a ramp on his property that goes directly onto the adjacent interstate in order to keep him from constructing even a larger cross section for the roadway. A couple of other points is, after talking to communities that had either regional or super regional malls, we were going to require that the developer put on site a satellite police station and utilize some of the sales tax revenue that we had originally intended to use as incentive to hire some more police officers, because I've been told by just about every mayor that I talked to with one of those centers that there was a lot more trouble than you think there is. He said, be prepared for it. Right across the street from the super regional mall was more of a regional center that got approved, and unfortunately, shortly after they got approved, the economy took a downturn, and finding retailers was a problem. One of the stipulations that I always had in place before approving any of these things is that the developer had to present me with fully executed letters of intent from the end user, so we knew exactly who was going into the malls. Because so many times we had learned that developers will tell you that they're attracting this particular retailer or another and they don't show up. Well, the regional center, after the economy turned, had zoning in place, but even with the agreements and stuff in place, started bringing in retailers that were not necessarily what the community desired. The outlet center that we just mentioned is basically under review right now in New Lenox, or on another site adjacent also to the interstate. But the only thing that's kept them from building it is the fact that they can't afford to do the roadway improvements. like I said, they're extensive. With the super regional mall, we were looking at 8-lane cross sections, 10-lane intersections. With the regional, it was a little less, but still being by 2 interstates, we were going to make it as much as possible and require additional dedicated right-of-way in order to expand it in the future. That's basically the clarification I think I was asked to give, but once again, I have to echo what a number of other speakers have said. You've been very patient sitting here. I've sat through many of these public hearings, and some of them lasted, well, I had one that lasted 8 hours at one time. But I congratulate you on your patience and your willingness to hear everybody's thoughts and to give their testimony, and I wish you well in making your decision. Thank you.
Finish. At this point, we have no further witnesses that we wish to call at this time, and we would invite any questions, or we have to answer any questions.
I'm going to open up questions from the board. Connor?
This is with respect to acre. I think there's another objector's case with respect to Timber Lake who filed as an objector, but with respect to acre, I think it's right.
What is that again?
We presented Acres case as an objector. There's another objector that registered, which was Timber Lake Civic Association.
I have that.
Okay.
I have that as a separate.
Correct.
objector.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, one of the questions I have, when we started these hearings, it was stated that this land had been designated to have some commercial activity on it. There was some discrepancy over the amount of land. And at first, I was told that it was about 50 acres. And I think it was an IGA that was established. And then you stated that that was an error. My question is, when was that original IGA established? And when did the error become apparent?
The original IGA was established in 1999, April of 1999, as a product of the litigation between North Barrington and Hawthorne Woods, as well as a product of the public hearing process that took place at that time. That was the initial boundary agreement, called for not less than 35 and more than 50 acres. Okay. It also had a series of restrictions, and I believe we've included that in our exhibit book.
Right.
That was then amended in 2002. In 2004, the Village of Hawthorne Woods redrafted its comprehensive plan that had not been done or redone since 1995. At that point in time, we had provided to the village planner all of the boundary agreements that we had and so forth, and as well as the development brochure that we were working off at the time, which is also included in the materials. And we gave them that information, and they drafted much of the verbiage in the text, as well as updated the maps. They picked up the map, they did not pick up the change in the text from what had been in the original agreement. In terms of when it became apparent, to my knowledge, it became apparent for the first time during this process.
This process right now.
I've been here at the RPC, but
Yeah.
this zoning request
Okay.
that has brought us here within the last couple of months.
Okay. One side comment, I appreciate very much the commentary that was given on Gertie Mills. Due to the fact that I live in that area, I'm very familiar with that area, and I go down Hunt Club Road every day, it's through school and all that. I really appreciate it, and I was also involved in the early development of that project, so I appreciate that comment. Berming, were you the one that mentioned the lack of berming, just ponds?
I was.
Okay. I appreciate that comment because that goes into my thinking very well.
And the point was that very simply that there was a substantial burn that was done. If you recall back, there was at the conclusion of the 1999 mall process, there was at that time, as there is today, an annexation petition from certain residents in Valentine Manor. That went through, was ultimately approved by the court, and it took a couple of years to go through that process. But when it was concluded in 2001, approximately April of 2001, Judge Stephen Walter issued an order approving that annexation and certifying that it met all the statutory requirements. The Village of Hawthorne Woods was prepared to take action on that annexation petition at its May meeting in 2001, which coincidentally was sort of when the new board was taking over, the old board was gone, and so forth. And that morning that we had the meeting, the applicant went in and obtained a TRO preventing the village from annexing the property at that time. There were then some subsequent discussions during an appeal that Dimucci took, or that Taubman took of that decision, and part of the solution, part of the settlement of that appeal was that they agreed to build a substantial berm along the northern border of Valentine Manor in this area. And they accomplished that berm by taking the spoils from the widening and redirecting of Route 22 when they built the 22 bypass around Lake Zurich. And so what's in that berm is a lot of road spoils. There's some other debris that perhaps shouldn't be there, but nevertheless, they have a substantial berm that is probably 20, 25 feet in height. It's similar, in my mind, to the berm that's along the western edge of Gurney Mills along Hunt Club Road, where when you're at the road or at a ground level and you look up, you can't see what's behind you. Okay? That aspect, I think, was noticeably missing along this area, along Old McHenry Road. There's a wonderful visual buffer down here, but there was nothing in the applicant's plan up here that would provide that kind of visual buffer to existing residents in Hawthorne Woods.
I think that point was made earlier at one of our sessions, that there was nothing there on McHenry Road to block that. That's all I have right now that's appropriate to your organization.
Thank you.
Thank you, Al.
I have no questions for Abe. I do have questions a little later for the village, like Barrington and everybody.
On this particular comprehensive plan, that red area signified where you thought commercial should be. And it should be across from Timberlake Road on Route 12, correct?
It was. That specific site location was chosen in that diagram, I think, for two reasons. One, in connection with the Taubman proposal in 1999, there were a number of traffic studies that were submitted by both Taubman as a developer, as well as the Village of Hawthorne Woods commissioned a traffic study that I think was done by Mike Ziegler at Siegel, Christopher Burke Engineering. And as part of that, and considering what the state requirements were and warrants as they went through it, they thought that given the distance between Route 12, where there currently is a signalized intersection, you need a certain distance there between there and when you could have another entrance so that you could have full access. And my recollection is that the discussion at that time was that the closest point where you could have full access, or even a chance of getting full access, was at Timberlake Drive or working to the south. And so it made some sense then, if you're going to look at a smaller scale development, that you put it in that area.
And that red area signifies how much acreage?
25 to 30.
25 to 30, not the 50.
Not the 50. That is based on the 2002 amendments to the boundary agreement.
And then the green area was just kind of left there for some sorts of residential? Is that what was playing back there?
Yeah, in the 1999 boundary agreement, there was some, not as much specificity. It called for residential and open space on the remainder, without very much detail as to what type of residential it should be. Should it be multifamily, single family, 1 acre lots, half acre lots, how that would all be. In the 2002 amendment to the boundary agreement, we got much more specific. And after a great deal of collaboration with the Village of North Barrington, both villages decided that it would be appropriate to use a transitional residential buffer So that you started with at the outside, since there are 1 acre lots on the north or the east side of Old McHenry, that you would start with 1 acre lots along that exterior portion. And then you would gradually transition into the commercial uses by making smaller the lot sizes as you went street by street in there until you got right up adjacent to that, perhaps with some small-scale townhomes like the ones they did at the Ivanhoe Club or that they did on the backside of Windstone that are very, very high residential quality and yet still multifamily. The point of that is unlike a situation where you're shoehorning in commercial development, the idea here is that this would be developed as part of a master plan for this entire parcel so that people who purchase residences, houses, homes, townhomes, whatever, on these parcels, they'll know what they're moving in next to. So you develop the commercial first, and then you buffer out with the residential. So anybody goes there knows what they're getting. Just like the residents in this area where they were getting in the estate zone.
Okay, so then, what is it that your group wishes to have in that property? Do you still go by this plan, want some commercial, some residential? Do you not want anything to happen? Do you want, what kinds of things do you foresee?
To quote an often abused saying, let me be perfectly clear. It is not our position that nothing should go here. Frankly, and from a personal level, I would like to see a plan come out of a collaborative process with the community, with ACRE, with the 2 villages in the county, that we could get something built here, because it's taken 15 years of our lives going through this process, and it would be nice to see something done. So that we don't have to be worried about it. Now, what should that be? ACRE's belief is that it ought to be consistent with the 2002 boundary agreement. It ought to be in that 20 to 30 acre size. It ought to have a .2 FAR. It ought to have some commercial out along Route 12 that's designed primarily for local uses. Not the type of thing that's going to draw traffic from all over, not the type of thing that Harry just talked about with generating trips from 20 to 30 miles away, but something that serves the local community. We proposed Hawthorne Woods proposed a use during the last decade where you would have a small community-oriented shopping center. This was before we had Whole Foods or Fresh Market or some of those uses, but that kind of a smaller grocery component that was 25 or 30,000 square feet. We looked at a series of small localized businesses that would serve the existing community so that people in these areas would not go into Lake Zurich to do those types of shopping, but could do it here. There would be entertainment components in connection with restaurants, outdoor cafes, perhaps the bar and the kind of concept, things like that. But that was the embodiment, I think, of what the retail development would be. In terms of the remainder of the process of the property, it's our position that residential is probably the most appropriate buffer in that area. And I would suggest that it's even more appropriate as a buffer than simply having a remainder of open space. If you have just open space, you have no buffer. You've got sight lines, you've got a longer distance, but there's no buffer. There's no transition there for you visually. So if you did that kind of transition that I've talked about in terms of residential uses, we think that would probably be a good first choice. I would say a good second choice would be some very high-end, small footprint office uses that are residential in character. If you took some of the Windstone office structures or the ones that were built in the Hawthorne Woods office park at Midlothian and Old McHenry, there was a great deal of attention paid to architectural detail. You can't tell very much difference between the ones that are in the Hawthorne Woods Business Park between a home and what that looks like, unless you look very closely and see that there might be 2 doors or 3 entrances on a particular building. Those buildings are typically in the 8 to 10,000 square foot footprint range. At their largest, many were down in the 4 to 5,000 square foot range. So you can use that kind of a use even though it is an office use as opposed to strictly residential. It doesn't generate a lot of traffic because there aren't a lot of bodies in a law office or a small insurance agency like Virgil's agency over in Hawthorne Woods. Or we had a developer there, Richard Soba. There's a chiropractic office in there. There's actually a Goddard day school over there. Again, not much traffic being generated from any of those uses. I think Goddard only had about 40 or 50, perhaps 60 students when they started, so really not generating a whole lot of traffic in that area. Again, a localized use to serve the surrounding community, but visually very much in keeping with the aesthetic of the surrounding area.
So you want this commercial to look more, you don't necessarily want a strip mall there, but you want something that's going to be more cozy, more like the office area that can maybe blend in with what types of shops or restaurants or whatever would be on Route 12.
Yeah.
And then kind of move that into maybe some salon camp.
Exactly. In fact, the boundary agreement is very specific under the 2002 amendments that it not be simply a strip center or a big box or a series of conjoined retail uses, but rather they're supposed to be separate uses. I think it says not more than one use of up to 80,000 square feet, no more than 3 or 4 other uses that are in the 20 to 25,000 square foot range. Again, we provided those details in the exhibits, but it's very, very specific in terms of the bulk and the amount of square footage that you can have in any given building. But again, they're supposed to be separated, so it's supposed to be a pedestrian-friendly environment, something that provides gathering spaces for people in the local community.
The only objection I have to your case that you've been presenting is some of this old data that's about 14 years old, that it really doesn't have a lot of benefit for us, and has really nothing to do with today. But I do like to hear from you of what you think could be today versus what you talked about with the Topman development. That's all I have.
Great.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just quick, just maybe a more basic understanding of your organization, just a little history on when it was started and when was your membership made up of, and are there projects that you've worked on in the past similar to this or other regional developments that you've worked on as a group? Just so I have a basic understanding of acre and what they are, because I didn't get that in the beginning.
I will, I'll give part of the answer and I'll allow Harry to give the remaining. Acre was formed back in the 90s. It was formed at a time when Taubman was proposing to do a project on this property. It consists of a variety of individuals in the surrounding area. We have residents who, as Harry pointed out earlier in his testimony, who are homemakers and soccer moms. We've got people who are professional planners. We've got architects, engineers, people who treat water for a living. We have a wide variety of background and professional experience among our residents. I will tell you that in the 1999 mall hearings, there were about 600 people that were showing up on Saturday mornings at St. Matthew's Church in the gymnasium. And most of those people were very supportive of Acre's efforts if they didn't actually make monetary contributions. In terms of what it takes to be a member, all we ask is that you care about the area in which you live and that you be willing to spend some time and perhaps a couple of dollars to support what we all hold near and dear, which is this quality of life that we have out here that we see eroded when we have proposals come through like this. I would add that Steve Reese and I and Harry McCartney and a couple other people were very active in forming Acre back in the early days. Julie and Mark Hamill, who since moved to Glen Ellen, We're also very instrumental in the early days in conducting the initial mall hearings where we've gotten a lot more sophisticated. We have these kinds of things now. We used to all go meet at the Hamels house for dinner, Julie would make us dinner, and then we go to a mall hearing tonight. So things have evolved.
And I might also say that, just to clarify, the Acre Incorporated Active Citizens for Responsible Expansion is a not-for-profit. It's an area-wide watchdog group, and it was actually formed by citizens of unincorporated Lake County, Hawthorne Woods, and the North Barrington area, but it contains members from throughout this southern Lake County region, including Wakanda, Long Grove, Kildare, Mundelein, and elsewhere. I might say that it was not formed immediately preceding the Taubman Mall proposal, but rather at about the time in the late 1980s when the Dimucci property was the subject of a residential proposal by the Kimball Hill Homes Club. And at that time, I know that Mr. Iden, the representative for the petitioner, said that he could never remember ever a residential proposal on the property. But yet Acre was formed at the time to voice concerns among citizens about the large density of this Kimball Hill proposal, which was to have several hundred homes, much less than an acre in this estate zoning position. So again, Acre is an area-wide organization. We've monitored and weighed in on developments as varied as a fitness center complex proposed by the Northwest Community Hospital Organization, the Barrington area, a senior living complex, today known as the Garlands in downtown, or the Village of Barrington. And so we would weigh in on the attributes there in terms of the height. If you're familiar with the Garlands, it began as a proposal that would tower 7 or 8 stories, and it's now come to the compromise solution there that the Village of Barrington accepted. Retail developments within the Lake Zurich area, hotel or lodging developments, and Acre volunteers were intensely involved in the Canadian National Railroad acquisition of the EJ&E rail line and its impact on local communities.
Thank you. Just a quick question to, I think it was the real estate appraiser. I apologize. Greg?
Let me find him, do we have another?
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to add, if you look at, I think it's exhibit 15, Ms. Simpson, there is a description there of one of the renderings that we put together as to how something could potentially look on that site. And also this development brochure. When I finish my comments, I'll bring you over a couple pages out of it for different parcels in terms of just sort of building layout separations and some of those sorts of issues that could be accomplished.
Well, first I have a statement that I would like to make because I'm probably the only person sitting in this entire room that prior to these hearings, I never heard of the Dimucci family. I never heard of the Taubman proposal. I never heard of the intergovernmental agreement. So I am experiencing quite a learning curve, and I can tell you that I'm here because of lack of knowledge, that I certainly have a clean slate and an open mind, so I can tell you that. I would like to express my appreciation to you and your group for a very clear presentation, a very thorough presentation. I appreciated that. And I just have one question for you, Mr. Hunt. When you discuss residential on the Dimucci property, can you please explain to me how that is not going to affect impact on local schools? Not quite getting that.
Sure. First of all, we're not talking about developing the site of 108 acres with, quarter-acre home sites or townhomes or things like that that could potentially generate hundreds of kids. I will tell you that with one of the developers that came in, we had a specific discussion about putting an age-restricted community where it would be more in line with sort of like the Del Webb concept, where it would not have any children. Another developer that came in and met with us when I was mayor talked about the concept of putting some senior living, assisted living type things, very similar to the Garland's in Barrington, which would allow a developer to increase the unit count without any burden to the schools. The point I was making before, and the one to which I think you are referring, is I was simply comparing what people in this area pay in taxes to the published data that the school district puts out in terms of the cost per pupil to educate them. And when you have a $15,000 or $20,000 tax bill and 8% of it's going to your school district, and the school district says it costs roughly $7,000 or $8,000 to educate a student, people in this area are paying more than their fair share of the tax burden to the school district. And if you look at that, I've got a child that goes to Lake Zurich schools, and if you look at our tax bill and what we pay, it's far, and again, and it's a multiple of what it costs to educate them based on what Lake Zurich publishes in their statistics. So that was the point. It's not that there's no burden, but the fact that the tax is offset. The final point I would make is if you look at this Hawthorne Woods development brochure, you look at the one diagram that we included in the exhibits of the residential and how it's laid out. We're looking at, I think, the boundary agreement probably calls for somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 or 35 residential units on that site in total. That includes 1 acre, smaller than 1 acre, and townhomes. So it's very, very low density. You're talking about very, very few children, if at all, if any, going to school district.
Well, that just brings me to another point. One of the men who was discussing real estate values of residential near a commercial endeavor just was saying that if the price of these properties diminishes the closer you are to the development. So it would seem to me that these residences immediately are going to be, can't think of the word, but I think you know what I mean, less desirable, perhaps.
Quietly,
Excuse me?
Did your tax go down even though your real estate values are not up?
Not mine.
Not mine.
I'm just curious. Just a statement.
I think the way I would respond to that is in this way. Hawthorne Woods has never been, in recent history, sort of the community of starter homes. There are other towns in the area that have had more, a greater housing stock at a price point that's designed for younger families. Hawthorne Woods has not really fallen into that category historically. I will tell you that in connection with the Hawthorne Woods Country Club, we addressed several of these same concerns. There were concerns put out. If you're going to allow 600 homes on 700 acres surrounded by this golf course, isn't that going to have a real strong negative impact on the schools? The fact of the matter is most of the people that have bought those homes have turned out to be empty nesters. There's not been a significant impact on the Lake Zurich schools from that. Basically, the boundary line is everything along Shoreland roads. The north half has gone to the Mundelein School District or Fremont Township for elementary schools. And everything south of Shoreland Road has gone to the Lake Zurich School District. And neither school district has really seen any substantial impact from that development, even though that was 600 homes. Now, at this point, there are probably 400 of those that have been built since 2003 when that project was approved. But given the price point, just not the type of housing stock that's going to generate a real problem there.
I was just questioning the desirability of buying a residential property with a close proximity to a commercial development.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
I'm just questioning the desirability of purchasing a home with close proximity to a commercial development. That was what I was trying to get an answer to.
If you look
That's what
at,
this is all about.
if you look at Vernon Hills, when Hawthorne Center was built, there were no residences nearby. If you look at Deer Park Town Center, there were no residences immediately adjacent to that lot. There were some in existing in Kildare. There were some in Deer Park, but none that were immediately adjacent. The residential that now abuts Deer Park Town Center is residential that came after the center was built. And we think that represents a substantial difference from the current situation. People who move in there know what they're getting. Listen, there's people that buy all sorts of homes. Okay? There are people who go in today and buy a house next to O'Hare Airport. Now, that might not be the housing choice that you or I make, but there are people who will go buy those homes. There are people who buy railroad tracks and all sorts of other things that you or I may think, well, gee, that's not necessarily where I want to live. But when somebody goes in and does that today, they know what they're getting. It's already there. And that's good planning, is to put that issue there, put that commercial development there, and then allow it to mushroom out from there with buffering uses so that when somebody buys there with a house, they know what they're getting rather than the other way around.
Thank you.
Next question, real quick, just so I understood. I don't know, maybe I misunderstood. So acre 35 dwelling units, is that what you had stated?
There was
You recommended?
there was a plan that Hawthorne Woods put out that I think had in the neighborhood of 35 to 40 dwelling units. If you look at the 2002 boundary agreement, it specifically talks about the size, and we can quickly do the math. I'm happy to.
Did that include any commercial? Did that include the commercial that you're indicating on there now, or was that the 100 acres and only 30 to 45 dwelling units?
No. That was, the boundary agreement calls for the 25 to 30 acres of commercial plus the residential to be used as a buffer. And when you did that residential, according to the calculations that were contained in the 2002 amendment to the boundary agreement, that would yield, depending on the nature of the housing stock and some discussions that would be had with the prospective developer, somewhere probably in the 30 to 50 unit range. Because the idea was you were going to have some single family home, and then as I described, those concentric circles of increasing density. Thanks.
Chairman, we done?
Yes, thank you.
Dennis?
I'm not Carol, before this, again, I knew nothing about the Dimucci property, didn't know much about this part of the county. Nonetheless, I'm still confused on your statement that development of this size would not help or be beneficial to the schools financially. I don't know how that works. There would be a much larger tax base, and the school would be an additional revenue, as well as the library and other taxes.
It's true that the school districts would receive revenue. If that were the justification for development, then let's build a 100-acre or 100-story skyscraper, and that'll be worth a lot of money. The schools will get really rich off it. That's not the concept of highest and best use. When you look at the surrounding areas, that particular factor is one of the 8 or 9 of the south factors. It's one of the 5 or 7 factors that you're to consider under the UDO. Our point is that having it with a residential use as it currently is zoned, or having it with a small-scale mixed use with a small-scale component of retail, as it was decided upon as a result of the consensus building process in 1999 in the 2 villages in 2002, that's not going to harm the developer, it's not going to harm the community, and in fact, it will provide benefits to the community because it will not just sort of tip the scale overtly or too much to one side or the other.
John?
I don't recall if it was Mr. Schmidt or Mr. Smith, your realtor appraiser, and we had him back. Whoever testified to the Hunt Club development,
think he stepped out. Let us go. In the interest of time, until we get him back, may I suggest that we continue either with any other questions or with the continuation of the North Barrington presentation?
Ma'am, did you have any?
We will make sure that we get him back here to answer your questions.
Did he leave?
Not that I'm aware of, but my understanding is he stepped out to take a phone call, and I'm not sure what transpired from there.
Mr. Braithwaite, I'd rather try and finish up the testimony from Akers. Yeah, you didn't have anything. I don't have anything myself. I think what I had has already been answered. Is he in sight?
Mike, could you take a look?
Are both your appraisers out of the room?
No.
There were two of them.
Yeah, Mr. Smith is right here. Mike? He's commercial real estate development, correct? Mike Smith.
The Hunt Club development, you gave reference to that and the costs and the impact it would be on this development down here.
Excuse me, John, Mr. Schmidt.
Okay, well, let's get Schmidt here then.
Mr. Chairman, I understand Mr. Greg Schmidt was called to a personal situation. I don't have his cell phone to reach him back, but we can represent him here at the continuation of the hearing. If you'd like the board to ask questions.
We don't have any, I don't think there's any other questions.
Well,
John, what was your question?
Well, simply that the Hunt Club development in Gurnee came before the mall, and it was designed as an equestrian community, hence limited people would be interested in it. And I didn't understand how he could draw a comparison between the two, which he did, and recognizing a specialty group that was only buying out there because it was an equestrian community would only attract to that market. And he compared it with everything else, and that was my concern, because recognizing realism.
We will get him back here to answer your question directly. The only thing I would add in response is.
I wouldn't care to hear what you have to say about it. Thank you.
Not much has changed since the Hawthorne Woods Country Club here, Mr. Rydell. Thank you for your candor.
That's another comment, and I don't know, I assume he's not coming back tonight. My only comment was also in comparison. I was just a little confused and wanted to expand a little bit if you would relay that the Gurnee Mills property, which I think is about 1.8 million square feet, it didn't quite correspond in my mind to this development. So I was trying to, I need some clarification on some of the comments he made, because I don't think it was comparing apples to apples when it came to that.
Are there any questions from the Dimucci?
Mr. Chairman, we'll rely on our experts in the application, although we would like to reserve at some point the right to address this idea that the application is somehow vague, but for a layman.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the public who wants to cross-examine that is signed up? Wants to cross-examine Akers? No? The board want to close the questioning of Akers? You want to close it?
Until we hear from the,
All right.
or Smith or whoever.
Sure, it's Schmidt.
Right, but he's not coming back tonight, right?
We will get him back here for you. Can we at least close that portion subject to the questioning by the 2 or 3 members of Mr.
The
Schmidt?
board doesn't want to close the questioning yet.
Okay, that's fine. Mr.
We're
Chairman,
trying to follow up with North Barrington.
Mr. Chairman, that's fine. We'd like for them to continue, but we would request that at the conclusion of this evening's meeting, that an opportunity be provided for Aker to meet with the 2 villages, the county representatives, and to further explore the topics that have been.
That's not up to this board.
Well, we're
That's
requesting
an issue you have to take up with the county and the 2 villages.
we are specifically requesting a continuance for that purpose.
Well, I'm not going to grant one because I haven't heard that there's any meetings set up.
Thank you.
Mr. Braithwaite, you want to continue with your presentation?
Village of North Barrington would like to call one of its village engineers, Andrea Crock, who will be specifically talking about drainage and comparing the original proposal with the proposal as outlined in the letter of intent, PRACHD.
Apologize for that. My name is Andrea Pratt. I'm a registered professional engineer in Illinois and also a certified floodplain manager. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of...
Could you spell your last name, please?
I'm sorry, it's P as in Paul, R-A-C-H-T. You must not be German.
You want to spell that again?
It's P as in Paul, R-A-C-H-T as in Tom.
Got it, thank you.
I started out with one German name and then married somebody with a really nasty German name. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of the Village of North Barrington as the village engineer. I've been an engineering consultant for North Barrington for approximately 10 years now. So I have quite a familiarity with their drainage issues within the village. And during previous Plan Commission meetings, I testified on behalf of North Barrington also as to the extent of existing flooding problems that occurred downstream of the Dimucci property. These problems consist of and are located throughout the Windstone subdivision, at Miller Road, and then also through the North Flint Creek corridor within the Biltmore area. The problems include some structural residential flooding, road flooding, particularly at Miller Road, surface flooding and creek flooding of Northland Creek and of Stone Creek through Windstone. Our concern with this project from the beginning has been that the amount of detail originally submitted with the project seemed to take little account for the stormwater management, both on-site and off-site, and that they really relied primarily on the statement that they would meet the requirements of the watershed development ordinance, which is enforceable on the site. That watershed development ordinance is excellent within Lake County and within North Barrington and Hawthorne Woods, and we rely on it to control stormwater, but we have concerns, and the village had concerns about the project increasing existing flooding problems with a little accountability to the development. I want to support voice support of the approach outlined in the letter of intent that's been presented to the Zoning Board of Appeals. With specific respect to the stormwater management, if the letter is agreed to, the final site development will be required to do the following items, which were not originally in the proposal that came first to you. It would reduce the maximum allowable floor area on the property. This, in and of itself, does not mean that there would be less impervious, but we expect that it would lead to a lower total impervious area on the site, which would then reduce runoff volumes from the site and lower the risk to the downstream properties. The letter of intent also talks about lowering the allowable release rates from the site to a maximum of 0.02 CFS per acre for the 2-year 24-hour event and 0.09 CFS per acre for the 100-year 24-hour event. And this would reduce the peak allowable runoff rate from the site as compared to the original proposal. The letter of intent also discusses allowing the Lake County Planning, Building and Development Office and the Stormwater Management Commission to exercise concurrent review of the property and approval over the stormwater permitting. The village believes that this will give them extra assurance that the project will meet the standards of the watershed development ordinance. And then the letter of intent also discusses the IGA and forming an IGA between the villages and the county. It's my professional opinion that I'm supportive of that on a professional level. While the letter of intent is important for the project development and it is an improvement upon the original site application, I believe there are still several items that will need to be addressed with the site planning. These things include a preliminary engineering plan and proper design and implementation of best management practices for the site. And we would also recommend that water quality issues be addressed with the site planning. And these are things that I feel should be incorporated into the intergovernmental agreement. And that is my statement for tonight, so thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I am informed that Ms. Pratt as well as Mr. Brown are not available on Thursday for cross-examination. Mr. Brown would be available next Tuesday, but I wonder if it would be desirable to go out of order. We have one more witness, but I wonder if it would be desirable to go out of order and have cross-examination of those two individuals at this time.
Have you got the one more witness ready to go?
We have one more witness who would probably take 15 minutes. He says less than that. 30 minutes.
What are they testifying to?
And this will be the executive director of ACOG, who will be testifying, who is also a professional planner, and be able to testify in a comparison of some of the elements of the original plan with those of the new plan and the new proposals as outlined in the letter of intent. And so she is available at any future date.
We've only got 20 minutes left here, so I mean, it's going to take a half hour. We're going to go over that. Staff, we're not scheduled to go Thursday, right?
That's correct.
And there was a tentative schedule for Monday. I think there's a problem. I think there's at least 2 board members here that I understand will not be available Monday. Is that right?
Tuesday, we had done a survey on the side. Tuesday.
Is Tuesday a possibility?
We can talk to County Board and see if it's available. Staff will be available on that day.
Okay, can we find, is this facility available?
I didn't see any of the owners there here tonight, but they typically accommodate us for most of our meetings, especially early in the week.
I'd like to I'm just finding that Monday is not a good day, which is a tentative one. I'm not sure we're going to finish up Thursday at the rate we're going here. So we're looking, Ward at least, I think, is looking at Tuesday and Thursday of next week, if needed. Is that workable?
We'll make it work.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
for earlier in the week, there might be some conflict with some holidays. I know Monday night, many people have served, I don't know about Tuesday. So that might be a consideration.
Yeah.
And I also know that this Thursday, there's Patrick. Or the Packers Bears game.
To meet this Thursday and the following Tuesday.
Say that again.
Staff is prepared to meet this Thursday as tentatively planned already, and next Tuesday if necessary.
Okay. Monday's out, correct?
If the ZBA would prefer not to meet on Monday.
The ZBA is conferring, that's what I'm hearing from the members.
We can accommodate that on Tuesday.
All right, Mr. Braithwaite, you don't have any of your witnesses here, right?
Well, we have just one witness that we're going to have.
Oh, that's going to be a half an hour. All right.
It's a cross-examination. The other witness is not being available. If there is cross.
Mr. Chairman, it's also a possibility that the zoning board prefers to, in the interest of accommodating cross-examination of these particular witnesses tonight, the ZBA can continue the hearing past 9 p.m.
I don't think the board wants to go beyond.
How many questions today? How many questions?
Does the board want to cross-examine the witnesses we've heard?
Okay.
All right. We're going to cross-examine the witnesses we've heard. Go ahead, Al.
Okay, I'd like to have Mr. Brown.
Jeez.
Come to Brown. My questions are relating to the agreement, or the proposed agreement between the two villages and the county. And one issue is with the height. You know, I'm looking at an exhibit here that the village of North Barrington has a 35-foot height restriction in commercial, is that correct?
That's what I understand, yes.
And the county also has a 35-foot general commercial. And what I'm seeing here now is an agreement that would allow structures up to 65 foot. And I was wondering, why is the village agreeing to that?
Well, the county has the authority to offer height greater than 35 feet through its conditional use process. The intent really is to accommodate greater height in the middle of the property rather than along the periphery. Spread it evenly across the entire site of 35. It may have a greater impact on the adjacent properties, particularly the residential to the east, than if you allow the height to go up in the middle. It also accommodates non-retail use throughout the floor.
I just find it interesting because the village has that limit, 35 feet, and then right across the street you're going to have up to 65 feet. And then the other question is, how are you going to screen 65-foot high structures from the giant neighborhood?
Well, the actual language suggests that the height of that additional 15 feet is for architectural features and not intended to be across an entire building. So cupolas and towers and the like could exceed that maximum height of 50. No, you won't be able to screen it from all properties. But there are specific berming and landscape features that are accommodated both in the pattern book and in the additional standards that are suggested here.
Then the second question I have is that the village is also agreeing to the rezoning of the entire parcel, 109 acres, to commercial, general commercial, and then restrict it, with a PUD. Was there any consideration given on just rezoning that parcel along Route 12?
Well, first, I was not party to the actual negotiations between the three parties. I can't tell you what they considered. The village's support for the compromise is based on the fact that the county has stated specifically it would not issue the change in zoning until all the final plans are available. That's presumably quite a number of months down the road, and that the zoning that would be created is very specific to the end development plan. So calling it rezoning across the entire property would make all of us feel bad if we were GC, general commercial zoning, over the entire area without the kinds of stipulations that are encouraged here.
Have you worked in the past with PUDs that put restrictions on properties before, similar to this?
Yes.
And how have they worked?
Well, the specifics of those PUDs, when they exist prior to the building permits being pulled, et cetera, accommodate commercial development. I think that Deer Park is a good example of the fact that that's very specifically stipulated in their development agreement and the zoning that goes with it. It wasn't simply a permitted zoning that's in the book that they could rely on. There is a PUD that's very specific about what they can do. I would say that most people, maybe I shouldn't say that, many people believe that the Deer Park development is high quality and supportable with similar quality where
shown here.
Okay, that's all the questions I have.
Mark, did you have anything?
Nothing more at this time.
Jerry? Right, Tony? Carol?
No.
John?
The young woman with the stormwater, problem.
Andrew?
Fraulein.
Pronounce her last name.
You spoke of runoff, and it wasn't a very bright picture as I depicted it from you. Soil conditions and water runoff in the area are generally not good. Is that?
The site is at the top of this watershed. It's upstream of everything. There's no real areas that drain to the site. So everything that is in Windstone, in Stone Creek, and then down is everything, it has a lot of downstream properties to it. And there is a lot of known flooding problems through there. Much of that area, particularly Biltmore and even much of Windstone, was developed prior to the current standards that are in the watershed development ordinance. So that leaves us with looking at the properties that remain to be developed in the county with a closer eye. It doesn't mean that they cannot be developed. It just means that we have to look at them a bit more closely to make sure that they don't increase the problems that we currently have in that area. And that's what we're really looking at here. I'm not pretending that sites can't be developed just to prevent changes in stormwater management. The site could be developed in a way to improve the stormwater management, and that's what we really would like to see done with it.
The current status of the property now as vacant, needless to say, doesn't pose any additional runoff, or does it?
Well, it has runoff from it. We have not done a drain tile survey on the property that we're aware of from the villages. So it may go into drain tiles and go into subsurface flow. There is some surface water runoff from it, I'm sure. They have not done a preliminary stormwater conditions analysis on it. But every site has runoff from it. The thing is that what it runs off now is a known problem, and their proposed conditions and what they've done with stormwater management is more of an unknown right now, because we don't know exactly what they're going to do with the project, with the site development, in terms of how intense it'll be or what sort of, what area of it will be impacted with impervious and grading. So it'll be a change. We just want it to be a change for the better, which is possible.
Conceivably then, with development of this property, the area could improve as far as runoff is concerned.
Conceivably, and that's something that we would like to see addressed in the intergovernmental agreement, so
Or
that,
than what it is now.
yes, the letter of intent talks about the maximum floor area on the site. It doesn't talk about water quality. It doesn't talk about impervious area, or it does talk about what the maximum flow rates allowed from the site will be, but it doesn't talk about how the site will be developed in terms of best management practices. And we feel that that can be addressed in that intergovernmental agreement with how it's worded right now.
Thank you.
Andrew, would you step back up there, please? Guess I'm a little confused. The application and the staff basically, at least from what I've read, think that the water on that site can be contained on the site, and then, if necessary, release the acceptable runoff or whatever they're calling it. How do you feel about that? Is that a possibility? I know there's no specific plan.
Right, that would be called a zero release scenario where they try to have either enough volume for the site to be stored for the design storm, or that they factored in infiltration, that it would go into the groundwater. There's a lot of clay in this area, and infiltration is probably not, with concerns about groundwater and so forth, probably not the best primary solution for doing zero release. They haven't done calculations to say what sort of volume would be required to hold the design storm event. So right now, they're kind of showing a general area where the stormwater would be held, but we don't know how deep those ponds would be versus surface area. But that's math, and it can be done with the engineering process. The concern is, once they get that volume for a design storm event, if you had another storm event back up to it, what happens then if that storage area is filled and it overtops and goes downstream? And so we want to make sure that they're looking at trying to address that and looking at those downstream conditions to make sure that they're not increased in terms of frequency or depth.
And where is downstream?
This site goes underneath Route 12 through an existing culvert and then into the Winston subdivision to Stone Creek, and flows all the way through Stone Creek down to Miller Road, crosses at Miller Road there, and then into Northland Creek in the Biltmore area. And that eventually drains west towards 59.
And if those areas had flooding problems?
Thank you. It's all, this is the top.
Would you please be quiet so we can hear?
From Route 12 on, there's map floodplain through that entire Stone Creek and then down into the south into the Biltmore area. So it's all regulatory floodplain. This area has, I believe, some unmapped, it's not unmapped, it's unstudied floodplain on it as the top of that bit that connects into Stone Creek and Winston.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else from the board? Martin?
Andrea, you're a popular girl today. You mentioned field tile, and that's something very dear to my heart, because where I live, that's very critical. Are there field tiles on this Dimucci property?
I don't know. My standard answer to that is any area out here that's been farmed most likely has field tiles on it. And they'll be required to do a drainage tile study as part of the permitting process, but they have not done that yet.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, we're almost at 9 o'clock. Can I have a motion to continue the hearing to Thursday, September 13th, so 5 o'clock in Concord?
Also, as part of that motion, we also have a second continuance if needed, so that residents know that they'll be Tuesday, the 18th at 7 o'clock back in Concord, if needed, after the Thursday.
When will,
Is that 5? I'm sorry.
when will Ager and the other members of the public be permitted to cross-examine those two witnesses, given the fact that they're unavailable on Thursday?
They're not available Thursday?
No, Mr. Gregory had pointed that earlier, which is why I was suggesting. Go
Thank you
forward.
so much for all the information. I appreciate it.
If we don't finish Thursday, it'll be down the road Tuesday.
Well, for the record, Ager doesn't intend to cross-examine just one of those witnesses, so whenever they're available is fine, but we can't close the hearing and deny people the right to cross. I have, I think 2 to 3 questions, Mr. Brown.
Pardon? Thank you.
Chairman Bell, would recommend if he just has a couple of questions, probably best to address it at this meeting, if we can take a few minutes.
Thank you.
Board want to